Welcome back to another episode of Pep Talk, the Parent Experience Podcast. My name's Kayla, and I'm joined with my co-host.
I'm Robert.
And we're just super excited to be back and give a pep talk for this month.
Yeah, we hope it encourages you on the roller coaster of parenting that you might be on and that you leave inspired and encouraged and better equipped to raise amazing kids that know and love God. So what's our topic this month, Kayla?
This month, we're talking about responsibility.
Responsibility.
I honestly feel like it's just a great way to kick off a new year. You know, like I'm trying to be more responsible. We just started Whole30. It's kicking my butt. But can you say that? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Darn it.
I think it's okay.
Okay, well,
it's adults
we're
who are
kicking
listening.
it off in responsibility. So we're defining responsibility as showing others that you can do what's expected of you, right? You can be trusted with what's expected of you. And the kids are memorizing Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. And so it's just a really good practical lesson, but responsibility was important to Jesus, and so it's important to us as well.
Yeah, I love that. So before we dive into that topic, I just got to let you guys know that you're able to help us get this podcast out to more people. So whatever platform you're on, maybe you're on Apple Podcasts, maybe you're on YouTube, maybe you're on Spotify, just consider rating the podcast, giving it 5 stars, liking. And if you find this content encouraging, share it with a friend. Share it with another parent so that you can help them along in their parenting journey as well. But with that, I think it's time to dive in and introduce our guest, Kayla.
Let's do it. So we're super excited that we brought in Pastor Tyler and Sarah Barone from our North Platte campus. So why don't you guys say hey?
Yeah, absolutely. It's super exciting to be here. Not only, just on this podcast with our friends. And again, my name is Tyler Barone. I'm the campus pastor in North Platte, and I'll let my wife, Sarah, introduce herself.
I am his wife. My name is Sarah.
Yeah. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit? You said you're the campus pastor. For anyone who doesn't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family, your kiddos, what you like to do for fun? Just give us a little snapshot of your life.
Sure. Yeah. We have 2 kids. So we have Melody, who is 9, and Asher, who is 6. And we've been married for, geez Louise, over 12 years now, going on 13 years.
Way to go.
Yeah, super, super exciting. For me, what I like to do for fun is like the golf. You're going to find me out on the golf course most chances I can get. So that's what I enjoy doing.
Yes, and I like being a mom. I stay at home currently with my youngest, Asher, and we're doing homeschool. And then otherwise, I just take care of the house. I hang out with friends, and I drink a lot of coffee.
Yes, I love that. That's like a true mom. Like
That's a full-time job.
it is. I run around.
really
I take care. I keep the kids in check, and I drink caffeine. Give me caffeine.
I could not do it. No way.
So what do you do in the winter when you can't go out to a golf course?
Okay, so it's a pretty tragic time.
It is. I know.
unfortunately.
I feel for you.
Yeah, but there's this place in North Platte called Axes and Aces that they just opened up, and it's indoor golf simulators and indoor pickleball courts, which is something that I'm guessing I'm going to pick up at some point.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel pickleball is so trendy now.
It
Yeah,
is.
It really is.
I think
trendy.
Robert, do you play pickleball?
I have played
have
it. I don't
played
know
it.
that I can say I play it, but I have played it.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I enjoy it.
I
for
don't
sure.
think I have the hand-eye coordination. I would try it, but I'm pretty sure I would
You
walk
could
away
pick it up.
beat up.
You could pick it up for sure.
Man, well, okay, so we want to talk about responsibility today. We're super excited to have you guys on the podcast and sharing with other parents. Responsibility is a really broad subject,
It is.
from your own responsibility. But today we really want to focus on how to raise up responsible children. So Pastor Chris here on staff, he has a great talk that he gives every once in a while that he shares about how we're not trying to raise kids.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to raise responsible adults. We want to raise adults that are on fire for the Lord, that are the next leaders and the next future church, right? And so that is kind of the focus today. How are we going to raise responsible kids? And so I thought, let's go back all the way to the beginning. What do you remember is your first chore? As a kid? Did you have chores? Do you remember? My mom would write out a chore list, and we would have to go in and mark it throughout the day, make your bed, and then she'd have it rotate. So one day you set out the dishes, the next day you clear the dishes or, something like that. Because I had quite a few siblings. And so like we would rotate through all of these chores. That's like what I remember. My first chore is maybe like feeding the cats, I think.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I had a cat, and it was clean the litter, feed the cat, the things that my parents didn't really want to do, but
Accurate.
So true. Man, probably make the bed. I'm trying to go back, but I think it's probably like making the bed, cleaning the room.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't really have a ton of chores growing up, but like the first like big responsibility that I remember having was cleaning the dishes. And this was at a campground. Like my parents were camp directors. So like think of like a summer camp, industrial dishwasher, power hose to clean dishes.
That's awesome.
It was a responsibility that I very much enjoyed.
Yeah, I could see that.
I very much. Oh man. Well, so what have you guys noticed? Like what is good responsibilities that are age appropriate? So psychologists, counselors, they would say kids as young as 18 months can start having responsibilities. Not necessarily, they're not going to view it as a chore when they're 18 months old. They probably are like, I get to help do whatever, right? But like, what would you guys see maybe with the ages your kids are right now? Like, what are some responsibilities that you're giving them that would maybe give other parents an idea of like, hey, this is something I could try with my kids too?
Yeah, so with Melody, she gets up some mornings before us, and she lets the dogs out to go potty, and she lets them back in, and she feeds them, and that is her main responsibility, is to take care of the dogs. Also, putting her clean clothes away. Sometimes she helps me fold laundry. She mainly does towels and socks and stuff like that. Whereas Asher, a lot of it is just helping us. Not so much him having the full responsibility of something on him, but doing something side by side with us.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's mopping because that's fun.
Oh.
That doesn't mean I don't go back and re-mop where he mopped.
Totally true.
And then also he likes to play in water, so he does the dishes sometimes. So
Yeah, he
My
really
man.
enjoys the dishes. That guy.
Oh, that's great. And especially with a boy, I bet like the water activities, like anything that's kind of messy, but you can make it kind of clean.
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
a win, right?
It's a win.
Yeah. Man, some other things I was thinking of that we do with Lucy. She's 3.5, so she's pretty young, but we have her set the table. We give her the plates and the silverware, and she goes and sets it. And she always moves the spots. Like we never sit in the same seats, which I don't know. Like I know it's not a big deal, but it kind of drives me nuts a little. But she's
Yeah.
like, "That's not your seat." Okay. And she also helps with the dog, like laying him out and all of that. So I think it's important to find ways to help our kids start learning that responsibility, and even just taking Jesus's words very practically as a parent. Like, let's let our children be trusted with little, because as we can trust them in that, the more we're going to be able to trust them.
So good.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and then as they get older, I think we can trust like older elementary kids even to do a lot more. I think they can handle that weight of responsibility a bit, and it's important that we keep growing them in that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so easy, especially as a mom, to just say, oh, it'll get done faster and it'll, be cleaner if I just do it. But sometimes we need to take a minute and allow ourselves to give that responsibility up to our children to teach them.
Yeah, I think that is good. And with that too, when kids are young, a lot of times, like you're saying, they come up and they want to help us, and it's easy for us to be like, oh, no, go play. I'll get this done.
Yes.
But then I think that will come around to bite us in the end, because they're going to then, when they're like 10 years old, we'll say, hey, could you help us with this? No, I want to go play instead, right? But if we just start it as young as we can, whether they're 10 now or 3 or, 18 months, I don't know. An 18-month, I don't know what you're going to do with them, but they can
Yep.
help something.
Totally.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
really
can.
good. I want to make sure the parents listening don't miss that piece there. So I think what you're telling the parents they need to do is you've got to be willing to delegate responsibilities,
Yes.
and you've got to be willing to increase your tolerance for mistakes
True.
and things maybe not getting done exactly the way that you want them to be done. Because if you don't give them space to make mistakes, to not do things exactly perfectly, how are they ever going to grow?
Yeah,
how
that's
are they
good.
ever going to learn? So maybe a parent's listening and they're saying, hey, I find myself in that spot. Hey, let's just shift it just a little bit. Let's just be willing to delegate just a little bit more, increase your tolerance for mistakes a little bit more, and your kids will be better for it. They'll grow and they'll become more mature and responsible adults moving forward.
Yeah, that's good.
It's good.
So with that, Pastor Tyler, with your experience, you might be able to speak to this question a little bit more. But like, what are we trying to avoid by raising responsibility in our kids? What are we trying to avoid that we don't want to have happen with our kids?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so we had the opportunity to be in youth ministry for about 10 years before we moved out to Nebraska. And man, I'm telling you, from that experience of just working with teenagers, you can quickly tell the kids who didn't have responsibilities and who weren't made to essentially grow up. And it really hurt them when it came to their ability to do well in school, their ability to respect people. So I think really what you're trying to avoid is raising up adult children. Like that's what we're trying to avoid, right? Is when we don't teach them how to be responsible. We're teaching them how to fail in society. And that's not something that any parent wants for their kids. And it's really easy to, like you were saying, Sarah, like in the name of I love my kids, so I'll just go ahead and do it, or this is my responsibility as a parent, so I don't need to put this on them. It's really easy. It's kind of that fine line of when do I give them something and when do I not just unload everything on them. But man, when you are reluctant to give your kid responsibility, you're really setting them up for a difficult time in their workplace, in relationships, and respect for authority. It's just kind of the whole 9 yards follows.
I think that even plays into our spiritual walk, and when we shepherd our kids and their hearts spiritually too. The Bible tells us that as followers of Jesus, that we're part of a body, of the body of Christ. And each function of the body has a responsibility. We all have a role that we're to play. We all have gifts that we've been given, tasks that we can do when we follow the Holy Spirit's prompting. And I think if we can help our kids learn their responsibility in the family, that then we can use that picture of how the family functions and how we all have our role in the household. Well, we also have that in the household of the body of Christ. So I think that's good.
It's really good.
So what is one way or a couple things we could do with our kids to start helping them practice responsibility?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, again, we'd already talked about it a little bit, but giving things away, finding out what are the things that you can give your children. But then, just one of the things we did, it was a lot of fun. We incentivized our kids a little bit. We gave them like carnival tickets. And so basically every time they completed a chore or every time they did, something around the house, they would get a ticket for the day. And then they would also get a ticket if they were responsible with their actions and their behavior. And at the end of the month, we tallied up all of our tickets and then we did something fun as a family based on how many tickets we have. So I think that's a good way to start, and that again can be really anything that you do in your house, right? It could be having them help with whatever it may be. I think one of the main things that you have to try to do when you're implementing that is it's so easy for our homes to become child-centered instead of Christ-centered. So it's really easy for us to say, well, my whole home is going to be revolved around my kids and what they want instead of, well, what does the Bible tell me about raising kids and giving them responsibility when they're young? And so we've really tried to take this stance of we're going to move away from a Christ-centered home or from a child-centered home to a Christ-centered home is kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I love the ticket idea because I think sometimes you want to do a money reward or you want to have this whole system all thought out and then you never start because it seems too overwhelming in the first place. But I love the idea of just giving a ticket every time and then just pick 3 activities that would be really fun as a family and say, if we hit this tier, we're going to do this. If we hit this tier, we're going to the park for a couple hours. I think anything like that is especially doable especially as we get started in these habits of responsibility in our family.
Yeah, and it teaches them that we're a team. They would work together to do things. They would make sure that, okay, Asher did his responsibility and Melody's going to make sure because Melody wants to go do the top tier thing. And so, it worked pretty well. And now that's something that we've kind of stepped away from because Melody's not as motivated by it. She's almost 10. She reminds us of it every single day, I feel like. But, we have this, we've built this habit, right? Pastor Robert and I talk about habits, and Atomic Habits is a book that James Clear wrote, right? And it's these tiny little habits that you implement in your life that push you to where you want to be. And that's how we started with Melody. But we've taken the tickets away. It's not something that we do with her anymore, but she still has the rhythm of being responsible, and it started there. So
I love that. I love that you recognized, okay, what we had been doing before was working, and now it's not working as well as it could, and we're having to adapt it. And I think that's something that you got to do in parenting all the time. Continue to evaluate and adapt. Wouldn't it be so much easier if it was just, here's how to do it, and it just works forever? Wouldn't that be great?
It would be great.
Well, then it changes
awesome?
from kid to kid, too.
Yes.
Like, this worked for this kid, but not the next one.
So much.
Yes, and everything we do with our children, it's just amazing that two children can come from the same parents and they're completely opposite in how we communicate to them, how we discipline them, how we love them, how they love us. It's so different, and just finding out what works for each child. And also, it's okay to discipline them differently and to love them differently because they receive that differently.
Yeah, that leads to a question that I have. I didn't look through the questions that Kayla sent to see if you're prepared for this, so this may be on the spot.
That's all right.
Maybe on the spot, but part of developing responsibility in kids is giving them responsibilities. Sometimes they'll be responsible, and sometimes they won't be responsible. So what kind of advice would you give to a parent when a child is not meeting the responsibilities that they've been given? They're not living up to them. How do you disciple your child in order to start being more responsible? What advice would you guys give to a parent? Do you have any experience that you can share with us on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, I think the first thing you have to consider and you have to make sure is that the expectations are very clear. The expectations of the responsibility. I think a lot of times as parents, we could say, well, go do this, or, go get your stuff done or whatever it may be, right? And if it's not clear, we also have to understand, like, okay, we have to spell it out for them. If expectations in parenting aren't set, then they can't be met. And so it's just setting that expectation of here's the responsibilities. Here's what's happening when you complete the responsibilities. Here's what happens when you don't follow through on the responsibilities. And just knowing that discipline is okay in those situations, right? And however it is that you need to discipline your kid, but it's okay to do that. But I wouldn't take the stance of moving away and removing their responsibilities, basically saying you can't do this, and so therefore I'm not going to trust you to do it. And I also wouldn't take the mistake, or in my opinion, make the mistake of, oh, okay, fine, well, you didn't do your responsibilities, so now you're doing triple the responsibility, and you're just like slave driving, punishing them. It's just sitting them down. Hey, you remember what we talked about? This is how it needs to be done, or you didn't do this, or you didn't follow through with this. Let's talk about it. Here's remember what we said. This is what's going to happen if you didn't. Sometimes I'll ask my kids, like, hey, do you remember? Because we don't agree on disciplines, but sometimes when there's a responsibility, I'm like, okay, Melody, what do you think I should do since you didn't do this? And she'll give me an idea. I'm like, okay, so next time this doesn't happen, and just following through on the boundaries and the expectations you set. But first thing, you just got to clearly lay it out for your kids.
Yeah, that is important. And I appreciate that you're noticing that too with kids, because I think it's important that we're shepherding their hearts in responsibility. And we don't want them to become so discouraged. The Bible warns us as parents, like, don't push your kids so hard that you discourage them, right? We want to encourage them. And so if they don't meet that responsibility, sometimes it's trying to go back to their heart and their motive. Did they try to meet the responsibility and they weren't able to? Okay, as a parent, do I need to go back and help them think through, like, how can we accomplish this? Like, I know you can do this, and maybe you weren't able to figure it out this time, but you can try it again next time.
Yep.
And I really like what you said. Like, I'm not going to give them a punishment that's 3 times more responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just going to discourage their heart and knock them down. Whereas, and then we're really following what Jesus said. Like, let's trust you with little. Once you can be trusted with little, then I'm going to trust you with even more, right? But we got to get to that first step together and really just shepherd them. Like, try it again and try it again and use the opportunity to teach grace and teach mercy and try it again,
Right.
you know? Just like when a kid's learning to walk, you know, if they don't get it, you're like, forget this, you know, let's go on. But we encourage them like, oh, you can do it. Let's try it again. I think it's the same with all responsibilities.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. Well, we're going to wrap things up here now with our final question that we ask all of our guests. And this question is one of our favorites because I just love to hear the different insight and wisdom that you guys can give those parents who are listening. So the question is this: what is something that you learned in your parenting experience up to this point that you wish you would have learned sooner? This question helps us just to be able to speak from experience to those parents who may be going through what you've gone through, and your advice can maybe help them just get a little bit further ahead than you were at that point in your parenting journey. So anything that you'd share with the parents listening?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but basically that you don't have to raise your children the same, that they have different personalities, and that your children are not always going to grow up to be the same.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. You know, it's just like our kids are different. I guess another thing, and people tell you this, right? But man, parenting's hard. You know, it's really hard. And sometimes you can feel like you're failing as a parent and like you're missing the mark. Just this ability to give yourself grace and give your kids grace. Like, you know what? I'm not perfect at it. And I think when we do mess up, that it's okay. One thing I really have come to the realization of lately is it's okay to be transparent. And I think it's really good to be transparent with your kids and to say, you know what? This wasn't right of dad, right? Dad was too upset here. Or, you know what? This is something that we need to address, whatever it may be. Just, I think, transparency.
Yeah.
Because I think there's so many times where it's this thought of, well, I'm the parent, right? And so therefore it's my way or the highway, right? My house, my rules, right? And to a sense it is, but being able to be transparent with your kid and just say, you know what? I understand this is how you're feeling. This is how I'm feeling. And this is what I could have done to help better the situation. So yeah, I agree. All kids are different. It's going to require different parenting styles. And then, man, it's okay to be transparent with your children and just level with them and let them know where you're at.
Fantastic.
That's some great stuff, you guys. Man, I hope parents that you're feeling encouraged and equipped with some new tools in your pocket to pull out this month, you know, with the new with the snow. Hey, here's a great responsibility. Go scoop the snow.
Right, exactly.
Help a mom out.
Maybe not the 18-month-old. Don't have them scoop the
that's probably
snow.
not age
Maybe.
appropriate.
You guys knew that, though. So, yeah, just to remind you guys, there's a new episode on the 15th of every month. So subscribe, like, jump in those comments, and remember this, parents, you're doing a great job.
That's right.
We're your pep squad cheering you on, so continue to raise amazing kids that know and love God, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.